الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين واللعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله الآخر الأهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are beginning to enter the later part of the first Ashra of Muharram. And we discussed in the previous nights some of the historical aspects that were very important in the decision making of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein to make the decision to leave the city that he loved a lot, the city of Medina, the city of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to go to Mecca because he had been asked to do something that he was never going to do, which is to pledge the allegiance to somebody like Yazid. Mecca was going to be a promising place for safety because it is ordained in the Quran that whoever enters the precincts of Mecca, he is safe. And with bearing that in mind, Imam Hussein alayhi salam with his family left Medina to go to Mecca. When he found out that Yazid has sent the troops to Mecca to assassinate him, even in the holy precincts, he decided to leave Mecca and head towards Iraq because the people of Kufa, the people of Iraq, had written to thousands of letters to him, pledging to him that if he comes, they will rally around him and resist Yazid ibn Muawiyah and the Umayyad dynasty. So he left Mecca and headed in this direction. And we talked about what happened along the way until he arrived on the land of Karbala on the 2nd of Muharram, 60 AH. There are narrations that say that when he left Mecca, the jubilation of the aligning up with Imam Hussein alayhi salam was so high that many of the Muslims joined him. Some say there are almost 1,000 people who joined Imam Hussein when he left Mecca to go towards Kufa. But as we know that as he was going on the road, the news of the martyrdom of Muslim ibn Aqil, of Hani ibn Urwa, of Abdullah bin Yaqta, of Qais bin Musahhar, these people were martyred in Kufa by Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, and the news started to arrive. And it slowly began to become very apparent to the people there that this is not going to be a war in which those who are siding with Imam Hussein alayhi salam are going to survive. So the weaker in faith left the Imam. People started to scatter around, finding routes of escape and leaving the Imam. When even Imam approached some of those people who he thought were going to be loyal to him, they offered their horses, they offered their wealth, they offered other kinds of help to Imam. But they said to him that we cannot go with you because they have a business, because they have a family, they have other things that take priority, rather than joining the Imam on the fateful day of Ashura. And Imam told them that I do not need your horse. I do not need your money. I need you. I need you to join me in this endeavor. Gradually, when he reached the plains of Karbala on 2nd of Muharram, we talked about Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi, who was accompanying the Imam, who had actually stopped the Imam and brought him to the lands of Karbala. At this point, Hur sends a message to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. And he says that I have now detained Abu Abdullah al-Hussein in the lands of Karbala, exactly as you have instructed me to do, and now I am awaiting your instructions. So Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad receives this letter, this message, and he immediately calls upon a person by the name of Umar ibn Sa'd. Umar ibn Sa'd, during the young age, was somebody who was of a similar age to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and there are narrations that say that they were together as children in Medina. He's the son of Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas. And it was foretold back then by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, that this Umar was going to be one of those people who is going to shed the blood of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. So he receives the summon from Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, and he says, come to Kufa immediately. I want you to go to Karbala and prepare to go to war against Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Some narrations say that Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad had already taken a bunch of troops and he was riding towards Ar-Ray. Ray, from what I understand, is the area around Tehran in Iran today, a very prosperous region. And Umar ibn Sa'd had his eyes on this because he was getting the governorship, he was getting to rule over Ray, something that he desired a lot. But he was intercepted by this letter and he was brought back to Kufa, according to one narration. According to one narration, he was in Kufa and he was given 4,000 soldiers and told to head towards Karbala. So Umar ibn Sa'd arrives in Karbala. By this time, the camp of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein had himself, his family members, the women of his family, and his companions. Total number, most narrations say about 72. There are some narrations that say that they were higher than that. It doesn't matter. It was a small number, whatever it was. So Umar ibn Sa'd, after he arrives in Karbala, he is trying to find some of the noble people of Kufa to try and tell them to go to Imam Hussein alayhi salam and to ask him why he was here, why he was in Karbala. Many of these people, the noble people of Kufa, refused to go. Why? Because they were ashamed. Some of them had written the letter to Imam Hussein alayhi salam to invite him to Kufa and had promised him that they were going to side with him. And they could not face the Imam and says, no, we will not go. Umar Sa'd finds someone who eventually says, I will go. And he goes to Imam Hussein alayhi salam and asks this question. And Imam responds, says, the people of Kufa called me and I came because of the invitation that I was given. But if you don't want me here, I will go back to Medina. One narration says that he said that I will even go to the frontiers of the Islamic empire, to the borders, and I will live there as a regular Muslim. Whatever you guys want, I'm ready to do it. This guy comes back to Umar ibn Sa'd and he gives this message. Now, the communication starts between Umar Sa'd, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, and Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. There is a point in time when Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, not finding that the 4,000 people that he had sent with Umar Sa'd was not enough. The 1,000 people that had arrived there with Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi was also not enough. So he started to send other people, other commanders, other troops going towards Karbala. The number that we hear a lot of times, that there were 30,000 soldiers on the day of Ashura facing Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, is not a random number, it is recorded. Because of who Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad was asking to go, to go to Karbala to face the Imam. But there are some narrations say that there were more than that. There were 30,000 who were there officially, with an official count. But there were more than that also who had arrived from Sham and from other places who were facing the Imam. So I want you guys and us to visualize this. A small camp of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. And if you look out there, there were over 30,000 people, well armed with their horses, facing the Imam. You can start to imagine what was going through the hearts and the minds of the people in the camp of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. Communications go on. At one point in time, Umar Sa'd meets with the Imam. There's a personal meeting. Imam requests a meeting with Umar Sa'd. So Umar Sa'd is asked that you are coming here and are prepared to shed the blood of the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Do you know what you are engaging yourself in? Do you know what the consequences of what you are engaging in is going to be? And Imam continues to say, because he found out and he knew. Says, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad has promised you the emirate or the rulership over Ar-Rai. I swear by Allah, he tells Umar Sa'd, that you are not going to get this. You are going to eventually die a miserable death, and nothing that Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, which he has promised you these things, is going to come to any kind of fruition. Umar Sa'd turns and he says that, but Mawla, I like big houses, I like the rulership, and I like all these materialistic aspects that Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad is promising to me. Imam says to him, I will give you more than that. What is more important than a house and a palace in paradise? But Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad was not moved by all of this. And the conversation again occurs between the Imam and Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, and Umar Sa'd. He says, how shall we come to any kind of conclusion about this? So Imam says, tell Ubaydullah that I can return back to Medina, or I will go away from here. I will go to the borders of the Muslim Empire. I will even exit the Muslim Empire, and I'll go towards Hind, if you want me to. I'm not going to interfere in the caliphate-ship of Yazid. I'm not going to be of any kind of hindrance. Let me go. Now, Umar Sa'd knows the consequences of killing the grandson of the Holy Prophet, and he did not want to participate in that. But he wanted both. He wanted the cake, and he wanted the icing as well. He wanted the dunya as well as the akhirah, and to save his akhirah as well. So he did not want to let the Rai go, but he said, you know what, I am going to write a letter to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, and I'm going to tell him maybe I can convince Ubaydullah to actually come to some kind of a peaceful negotiation and a peaceful ending to this, and let the Imam go. So he writes a letter to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. And in this letter, he explained to him and he says, look, the Muslim unity is very important. And Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, is ready to go away. There is a way out. There is an actual way out of going to war and shedding the blood of Abu Abdullah. One narration says that when Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad reads the letter, there is a sense of acceptance of this alternative that seemed to come, over him. But at that time when this was going on, another character enters into the stage by the name of Shimr Ziljoshan. Shimr was a person, and this is something that we all need to really know and understand who these characters were. Shimr fought on the side of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam in the Battle of Siffin. He was with the Imam Amirul Mu'mineen fighting against Muawiyah. That was Shimr. I heard in a majlis at some point, I don't remember when, that Shimr performed multiple hajjs. So he was not a person who was a deviant of Islam, he was a practicing Muslim. But what is the point of being a practicing Muslim when the materialistic aspects that you start getting to be promised about starts to cloud your thinking to the point that you are ready to shed the blood of the grandson of the Prophet? So if Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad at this point was ready to give a peaceful way out to Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, Shimr interferes. And he tells Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, and he says, oh Ubaydullah, if you let Imam Hussein go, if you let Abu Abdullah Hussein go, he will become more powerful and he will become a big problem for Yazid ibn Muawiyah. This is the only opportunity. He is trapped right now in Karbala. This is the only opportunity you have, to get to him. So Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad says, yes, you are right. And he drafts the letter and he gives it, to be sent to Umar ibn Sa'd. And look at the contents of this letter that Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad sends to Umar ibn Sa'd. He says, I sent you there for a mission. And you are now dilly-dallying with Imam Hussein as if you don't want to fight with him. I did not send you there to seek a peaceful negotiation with him. If you don't want to take this post, you don't want to take this task, you don't want to do this job, then abdicate yourself. Go, take yourself away from the position of being the commander of my army. I am sending Shimr, and make Shimr the commander of this army. And if you decide that you want to perform this task of killing Hussein ibn Ali, now look at what the words are. It says, after you kill him, I instruct you to bring his body on the plains of Karbala and and ride horses over the dead body of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam. This was the instruction that Ubaydullah gave Umar ibn Sa'd. So this messenger came to Umar Sa'd, and Shimr was with him actually. And he comes and he delivers this message to Umar ibn Sa'd, and Umar ibn Sa'd now is trapped. There's no other way. He has to go to war. He curses Shimr. And he says that, for you to want this position of power of being the commander of the army of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, you instigated him to write this letter and to come against me. You are at fault for this. But I am not going to let myself abdicate from this position. I am going to lead this army against Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, there's a lot of things that went on 7th of Muharram. Instructions arrived that any source of water to the camp of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam should be blocked off. So there were 4,000 soldiers who were lined up on the banks of the Euphrates River, making sure that nobody was able to go and access water from the Furat, from the Euphrates. One narration says that Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, along with a few of the men from the camp of Imam Hussein, went towards the water. They managed to sneak in and bring some water, perhaps for the last time, to the camp of Imam Hussein, even after this blockade took place. We now arrive to the 9th of Muharram, the day before Ashura. There's a lot of things that are going on in this time, but I'm just highlighting again some of the historical points for you and I to understand what happened during the 6 days or so before the 9th of Muharram, that had taken place. So the 9th of Muharram arrives. Before I describe what happens on the 9th of Muharram, tonight is the night of Alam Kashi of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas ibn Amir al-Mu'min. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This is a night where you and I pour our hearts out to that lion, the valiant of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, his brother. So before I proceed, let me just speak a few words about Abu al-Fadl for you and I to actually understand who he was. There was a time when Amirul Mu'minin, remember, my dear brothers and sisters, that the battle, what happened in Karbala, was something that was predicted from before, from the time of the Holy Prophet. So Imam Ali, Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salatu wasalam, knew that this was going to happen. And narrations say that he wanted somebody to represent him on the day of Ashura. And for that, he consulted his brother, Aqil ibn Abi Talib, the father of Muslim ibn Aqil. They say that Muslim ibn Aqil was very familiar with the different tribes that lived in Arabia at the time. He knew the people, he knew the different ancestry of people. And Amirul Mu'minin asked Aqil ibn Abi Talib, and he says, find me a tribe whose woman, or one of the women that I can marry, from which a son can be born who will be a valiant supporter of my son, Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. So Aqil ibn Abi Talib, with his research, suggests the tribe of Kalabiyah and the daughter of Hizam ibn Khalid, a woman by the name of Fatima bint al-Hizam. She came into the house of Amirul Mu'minin, and the first son that she had was Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Later on, she had 3 other sons, Abdullah, Ja'far, and Uthman. Narrations say that on the day of Ashura, they ranged between the ages of 19 and 22, so they were somewhat younger than Abu al-Fadl, because Abu al-Fadl was about 34 years old on the day of Ashura. That's just one narration, it doesn't matter. But the title that this lady Fatima received of being Ummul Baneen was because of the 4 sons that she had from Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salatu wasalam, who all 4 of them gave up their lives on the day of Ashura. If we have time, we'll talk about that, inshallah. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas lived about 14 years with Amirul Mu'minin before Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salatu wasalam became a martyr. After that, he lived with his brother Imam Hassan alayhi salam and Imam Hussein alayhi salam, as we all know. So you can imagine the kind of growth and training that Abu al-Fadl had from the best of people. If we talk about military capabilities, Amirul Mu'minin was there. Also Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. We talk about religious knowledge, again, 3 imams that he lived with. Can't compare that kind of training, that kind of tarbiyat of Abu al-Fadl. There is a saying from our 4th Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. He says that, sorry, it was from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He says that my uncle Abbas had very influential insight into things. Things that were apparent. But Abul Fadl had the ability to look even deeper into those things. And he says that my salams to my uncle, that when 30,000 men surrounded my father on the day of Ashura, my uncle stood by him on the day of Ashura. So the 9th of Muharram comes up. There is a person by the name of Abdullah ibn al-Mahal. His aunt was al-Banin, and he was on the camp of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. So he comes to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, and he says to Ubaydullah, our nephews are in the army of Hussein alayhi salam. He didn't say alayhi salam, obviously, I'm saying it. He says, I want you to grant a clemency, safety for these 4 people. Send a letter to them and tell them and offer them safety. Ubaydullah agrees, and he writes a letter of clemency, and he gives it first to one of the slaves that he had, and he goes and he delivers it, and immediately all 4 brothers reject it. And also on the 9th of Muharram, Shimr Ziljoshan, who is also related somehow to the tribe of Kalabiya, he comes in. And he comes to the 4 brothers, and he says that we are offering you clemency, we are offering you safety, because you know what's going to happen to you guys tomorrow. Take this clemency, and be safe. So the response that he got from Abul Fadl and the brothers, God damn your clemency. Allah curse you for your clemency. Says the clemency of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is better for us than the clemency that you are offering to us. You propose to shed the blood of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and ask me to join with you and then give me clemency for that? We swear by Allah that we will spill our blood, for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And Shimr was rejected. He was, told to leave, and he left. This was also a day, the 9th of Muharram, that Umar Saad came with the idea, with the plan of attacking the camp of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And we'll talk about some of those aspects on the Shab-e Ashur, inshallah. But Imam asked Abu al-Fadl, and he says to him, go to them and talk to them and ask them if they can grant us the respite of one more night before this battle can ensue. So from this you can imagine, my dear brothers and sisters, that Abu al-Fadl's importance in the army of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He was the negotiator. He was the spokesman of the Imam. And he had been given the alam. He was the alamdar of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He was the commander of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Narrations say, my dear brothers and sisters, that as long as Abu al-Fadl was there to the side of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Imam Hussein in his heart felt like he had the whole army near him. He felt like there was a battalion near him. You can also imagine that the women of the family of the Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, that when they saw Abu al-Fadl walking around in the camp, their hearts were filled. They knew that as long as Abu al-Fadl was alive, nothing is going to happen to us. The day of Ashura, my dear brothers and sisters, ensues. From the morning of the day of Ashura, the battle begins, and one by one, the companions and the family of the Ahl Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam starts to fall. It's about mid-afternoon when Imam Hussein alayhi salam and Abu al-Fadl Abbas were near the camp on the top of the horses. Abu al-Fadl had seen Ali al-Akbar pass away. Qasim was gone. On Muhammad were gone. And he turns to Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, because At this point in time, even his brothers had already been martyred. And one of them, and it is said that Abu al-Fadl made sure that his younger brothers would give their lives for Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam before he went to the battlefield. So here we are, Imam Hussein alayhi salam and Abu al-Fadl side by side. And Abu al-Fadl turns to the Imam and he says, "Ya Mawla, allow me to go to the battlefield." You can imagine what must have gone through the heart of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. He turns to Abu al-Fadl and he says to him, "Oh Abbas, you are the commander of my army. How can I let you go?" I can imagine that Abu al-Fadl must have turned to the Imam and says, "Imam, what army? Where is the army for which you have said that I am the commander of? Everybody is gone." Abu al-Fadl rides towards the Maidan, towards the battlefield, and he delivers a speech to them. He says, "Oh, you people, you have come to shed the blood of the son of the daughter of Rasulullah. You think that this is the right thing that you are doing? I am asking you even right now, stop this. Stop this battle." But the army was not convinced. They were stuck in their ways. Abu al-Fadl rides back to the Imam and he says to the Imam, he tells him what had happened. And when he turns around and looks towards the camp, the little children of the camp of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, and he could hear the cries of the children, "Al-Atash, Al-Atash, Al-Atash." Abu al-Fadl must have seen the dried lips and the dried tears of the children of the camp of Imam Hussein. He may have even walked to his niece Sakina, who was also really thirsty. And I can imagine this beloved daughter of Abu Abdullah looking up at her uncle and saying to her uncle, "Oh Ammu, I'm really thirsty." He gets instructions from Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam that, "Oh Abbas, forget about the fighting. It's only you and me that is now left on this battlefield. Why don't you go and fetch some water for the children and the women of the camp?" So Abu al-Fadl walks into these tents, picks up the mushk, which is basically a water skin that holds water. He puts it on his right shoulder. On one hand, he carries the alam, the flag bearer of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. And in the other hand, he carries a spear with him. Abu al-Fadl gets on top of the horse. The vision that is given of Abu al-Fadl, a tall, handsome, gallant warrior. They say that when he would sit on the horse, the stirrups of the horse, his feet would almost be touching the ground. This was the power of the physical strength of Abu al-Fadl. He got on his horse and he began to ride towards the Furat. The people who were blocking the way towards the river attacked him. And it is said that Abu al-Fadl fought valiantly against them, killing anybody that came in their way. And those who were cowards were starting to run away and actually create a path by which Abu al-Fadl reaches the river. And he enters into the river. 3 days had passed by and Abu al-Fadl had not had even a sip of water. Narrations say that Abu al-Fadl takes some water in his hands, and just before he was able to put it in his mouth, he remembered Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and the children of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. And he turned around and he says, "Oh, woe betide! how can I drink this cold water when Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and the children of Hussein are so thirsty? He threw the water away and he filled the musk, he filled the water skin bottle, put it back on his arms and got back on top of the horse. During the time when he was inside the water, the army of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, by the command of Umar ibn Sa'ad, had begun to relocate themselves and create positions by which they had surrounded Abu al-Fadl. Abu al-Fadl began to ride towards the camp of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam. They started to throw rocks and they started to throw spears at him. There was a Mal'oon who was hiding behind a palm tree. And he approached Abbas from the back and he severed his right arm. The mush began to fall. Abu al-Fadl grabbed it with his left hand and he put it back on his left hand and started to continue riding towards the camp. As he started to go to a certain distance, another Mal'oon came and he struck him on his left hand and and he severed the left hand of Imam Hussein, of Abu al-Fadl. Now he had no hands, so Abu al-Fadl started to hold the musk by his teeth. He held the flag between his legs and he started to rise towards the camp. At one point in time, an arrow came from a distance and it struck the musk and the water started to spill out from the musk. Abu al-Fadl started to see the water coming out of the water skin and I shout to him, Abu al-Fadl, stop the leakage from this musk. But I forget, oh Abu al-Fadl, you don't have any hands anymore. How can you even stop the leaking from this musk? And all the water began to pour from the musk out onto the ground. This time Abu al-Fadl couldn't go any further. He stopped. And this was the opportunity for the enemy to start striking him. One came from the back and started to strike him with a spear. There were rocks that were going towards him. There was an arrow that struck his eye. But there is a narration that says and one person struck him with a really heavy metallic thing that basically hit him so hard that Abu al-Fadl started to lose his balance from the horse and he started to fall down. There is a narration from a Zahra that says, Salam. Salam to the one who fell from the horse with arrows in his body, but when he fell from the horse, he had no hands to support him when he fell to the ground. Abu al-Fadl lands on the ground and he gives out a shout, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. The sound of the salam of Abu al-Fadl reaches the ears of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who was sitting by the camp, resting his hand on his sword. And when he heard the sound, it's as if something terrible had happened to him. He stood up immediately, went on top of the road, went onto his horse, and he started riding towards Abu al-Fadl Abbas. Anybody that was in his way, Imam fought against them vigorously until he reached the lifeless body of Abu al-Fadl. I have heard in a masa'ib from another majlis from a zakir of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam that Imam got off the horse and he went towards the body of Abu al-Fadl. He lifts his head up and he puts it on his lap, tears rolling down his eyes. Abu al-Fadl was in his last breath. And he cries to the Imam that, Oh Mawla, I have a couple of wishes. Please grant them to me. Imam says, Oh my dear brother, what are your wishes? Abu al-Fadl says, He couldn't open his eyes because there was blood in his eyes. He says, "Oh Mawla, oh Mawla, wipe this blood from my eye so that I can have the akhir ziyarat of your face." Imam wipes the face of Abul Fazl, wipes the blood off of the eyes, and Abul Fazl looks at the Imam for the last time. And he says, "Mawla, I have another wish." Imam says, "What is it, my dear brother?" And he says to Mawla, to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, that please don't take my mayyat, don't take my body towards the camp, because I have become very embarrassed. I had promised the children that I would bring water, but I failed them. I was not able to bring any water to them. Imam turns to Abul Fazl and he says to him, "Ya Abbas, you have made 2 wishes to me. Now I have a wish from you too." Abul Fazl says, "Ya Mawla, what is your wish?" And Abul Fazl, Imam says to Abul Fazl, that all my life, because of the way you were brought up, and for the reasons why you were brought up, you always refer to me as Mawla. You always refer to me as my master. Today, this last minute of your life, I just wish to hear the word Akhi from your mouth. I wish to hear you call me my brother." And Abul Fazl turns to the Imam and he says to him, "Oh my brother." At this time, Abul Fazl Abbas breathes his last, and Imam, with tears rolling down the eyes, the narration said that when he stood up from the bayat, he was like an old man, and he cried out, "Today, my back has been broken. My back has been broken, and there is nothing but disaster in front of me." He returns back to the camp. Sakina, who was waiting, runs out to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and he says, "Baba, Baba, where is my uncle? Baba, where is my uncle?" And Imam Hussein alayhi salam responds to him that your uncle is no more. Sayyida Zainab comes out and says, "What happened?" And Imam Hussein alayhi salam says to Sayyida Zainab that Abbas has been martyred on the banks of the Euphrates. They sat down and all of them cried vehemently for this valiant soldier. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that bihaqqi Babul Hawaij, bihaqqi Abul Fadl al-Abbas, that any one of us who has any kind of difficulty, any kind of challenge in our life, that by the name of Abbas, for the sake of Abbas, alayhi salatu wasalam, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us relief from any kind of problem that we have. This is the night, my dear brothers and sisters, as you see the alam coming out later on tonight, you know, the doors of du'as are open, and Abul Fadl has been granted this position of being Babul Hawaij. Pray your hearts out, inshallah, as we mourn the death of all the martyrs of the Shuhada of Karbala. Allah la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimin, wa saya'lamu alladhina zalamu ayyan kalimiyan kalimun, wa salamun ala al-mursalin, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
جهت تأجیل در فرج آقای امام زمان صلوات. برادر و خواهر عزیز، قسمی که میفهمین روز 7 محرم مختص است به باب الهوایج قمر بنی هاشم علمدار کربلا عباس. انشاءالله که بعد از نماز برنامه علم کشی داریم، هوایج همگی برآورده شوه. خواهش از همگی است که در صدر هوایجتان فرج آقا و مولای ما صاحب العصر و زمان در نظر بگیرین انشاءالله که خداوند در فرج آقا امام زمان تعجیل نماید. صلوات. با دریا پا نهاد و تشنه لب بیرون شد از دریا. جوان مردی نگر، همت ببین، غیرت تماشا کن. از جناب سید بزرگوار حجت الاسلام و المسلمین دکتر سید جواد سجادی خواهش میکنیم که بروی منبر تشریف بیارن با ذکر صلوات بر محمد و آل محمد.
جهت خوشنودی روح بلند و ملکوتی باب الحوائج علمدار کربلا ابوالفضل العباس علیه السلام بلند صلوات. اللهم صل علی محمد و آل محمد. اعوذ بالله من الشیطان الرجیم. رب اعوذ بك من همزات الشیاطین و اعوذ بك رب ان یحضرون. بسم رب الشهداء والصديقين قاسم الجبارين ومبين الظالمين والحمد لله رب العالمين. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب إله العالمين وشفيع قلوبنا رحمة للعالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الهداة المهديين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين إمام زماننا حجة ابن الحسن المهدي. اللهم صل على محمد. والسلام علينا وعليكم وعلى جميع عباد الله الصالحين. وأما بعد قال الله الحكيم في القرآن الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون إلى الخير ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. ای که از تو ز غوغای جهانت پیداست عالم ار محو شود نام و نشانت پیداست. تو که بودی و چه کردی و کجا کشته شدی لا مکان از اثر گرد مکانت پیداست. پیر کنعان به تو می گفت چو اکبر می رفت یوسفت گم شود و راز نهانت پیداست. دستان بریدم مشک بدندان حضرت عباس، قحط آب حرمت زاب رسانت پیداست. خوشنودی ارواح طیبه شهدای کربلا، اخصاً پرچمدار کربلا، علمدار حسین، باب الحوائج ابوالفضل العباس، بلند صلوات. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. محضر ارجمند همه شما سروران بزرگوارم، خواهران و برادران، دانشمندان محترم، عرض ارادت دارم. May Allah grant upon all of you, inshallah ta'ala, the rewards here in this world and hereafter, inshallah ta'ala, and jazakallah khair, dear respected brother Dr. Shakil, with beautiful mentioning about the event of Karbala, and we got a lot, alhamdulillah ta'ala, we learned a lot, and may Allah gives all of you a long-lasting life. Please recite a louder salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Just I want to correct one point that our respected brother mentioned about the Umar ibn Sa'd, that he wants this dunya and akhirah, but we always asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the qunut, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. But the way that Umar ibn Sa'd asked and wanted and desired, he cheated himself and hypocrite himself of asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this dunya and hereafter. So this is the points, and this is very important. When we asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what we are looking for in this dunya, as Amir al-Mu'mineen, Commander of Faithful, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam mentioned, Is'al Allah al-afiyah. Afiyat, inshallah ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us tawfiq, inshallah ta'ala, for recognizing the way of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and asking, inshallah ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to follow the right pathway of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. بحمدالله در چند شبی که در محضر شما عزیزان هستیم، در رابطه با عوامل رشد، انحطاط و رکود صحبت کردیم. عرض کردیم که چه عوامل سبب رشد انسان میشه و علت انتخاب این بحث ارتباطش با واقعه کربلا همین است که این سه موضوع مهم، شناخت انسان، شناخت قابلیت‌ها و استعدادهای انسان و همچنین در کنار شناخت خطرات و چالش‌هایی که ما در زندگی داریم، می‌تواند به عنوان درس مهمی از واقعه کربلا باشد. امشب که اختصاص دارد به باب الحوائج ابوالفضل العباس علیه السلام، منم می‌خوایم که بعضی از مطالب تکرار شود، گرچند بسیار از عزیزان را امشب زیارت میکنیم و انشاءالله تعالی در شبهای آتی. بسیار گذرا و مختصر محضر شما عزیزان عرض کنم. خداوند تبارک و تعالی در سوره نحل آیه 97 این گونه میفرماید: بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم، من عمل صالحا من ذکر او انثى فلنحینه حیاتا طیبه ولنجزینهم اجرهم بأحسن ما كانوا يعملون صدق الله مولانا العظیم. خداوند تبارک و تعالی میفرمایند هر کسی از زن و مرد فرق نمیکنه که عمل صالح و شایسته انجام بدهد، ما به او زندگی پاکیزه، حیات طیبه میدهیم و نسبت به عمل شایستهش برای او پاداشی میدهیم که در خور شأن و شایسته همان عملش هست. در شب‌های گذشته عرض کردیم که مایی که به دنبال حیات طیبه و حیات پاکیزه هستیم، واقعاً باید چه نوع نگاهی در زندگی خود داشته باشیم. آیا این نگاه ما یک نگاه گذرا و سطحی باشه برای ما مفیده که مقصد به اصطلاح عامیانه روز خود بگذرانیم، شب و روز بگذرم، یا اینکه نگاه ما یک نگاه عاقلانه توأم با خردورزی و برنامه‌ریزی در زندگی باشه. عرض کردیم که در شرایطی که ما و شما زندگی میکنیم در عصر تکنولوژی و اطلاعات که همه دنیا به هم اونقدر نزدیک شده، در کمتر از ثانیه شما احوال افغانستان، احوال سر تا سر دنیا، شرق و غرب عالم میدانید چی است. از جدیدترین ابتکارات و اختراعات بشر شما اطلاع پیدا میکنین و در کنارش در این دنیایی که ما و شما زندگی میکنیم با تفکر لیبرال دموکراسی، یعنی آزادی هایی که ما خود آن را تعیین میکنیم، و همچنین از طرف دیگر با توجه به باورها و عقایدی که خود ما داریم و دوست داریم نسبت با باورها و عقاید خود زندگی کنیم، واقعا ما با چالش های مختلفی روبرو هستیم، با مشکلات و سختی های فراوانی دست پنجه نرم میکنیم. شب گذشته عرض کردیم که یکی از این چالش ها خانواده های ماست، مشکلاتی که ما خود گاهی اوقات رو به وجود میاریم و مشکلاتی هم که از بیرون بر ما وارد میشه. و عرض کردیم و به این نتیجه رسیدیم که تنها راه حلش علاوه بر عقلانیت و علمیت، که یکی از جوانای عزیز ما بعد از مجلس سوال کرد که آقا شما این بحث باز نکردین که علم و عقل چه جایگاهی در زندگی ما دارد، که ما عرض کردیم که ما علاوه بر عقلانیت آنچه که برای ما راه حل سعادت دنیا و آخرت هست، قانون الهی یعنی همان دین را باید مهم بدانیم و نسبت به دین خود حساس باشیم. لذا یکی از عوامل رشد در زندگی ما دین باوران شناخت صحیح از دین است، شناخت درست و کامل از دین است. کلمه دین در قرآن کریم با مفاهیم مختلف همراه شده است. گاهی اوقات از آن به عنوان محکم یاد شده است، گاهی اوقات از آن به عنوان خالص یاد شده است، گاهی اوقات از آن به عنوان قانون فطری منطبق بر فطرت بشر یاد شده است. ذالک الدین القیم، این دین محکم است. الا لله الدین الخالص، و این دین خدا خالص است و در آن ناپاکی نیست. فاقم وجهک للدین حنیفا، صورتت را، وجهت را به سمت دینی کن که آن دین یکتاپرستی است. فطرت الله التي فطر الناس علیها، که فطرت انسان بر اساس فطرت الهی خلق شده است. خب اینها از مفاهیمی است که اهمیت دین را نشان میدهد. همانطور که در شب گذشته در رابطه با خانواده و کلمه بیت و فامیل که تقریباً 70 و اندی بار در قرآن تکرار شده، عرض کردیم که چرا این مفاهیم اینقدر مهم است و در زمره عوامل رشد ما انسان هاست. لذا عزیزان، وقتی که ما دقت میکنیم به این که خداوند تبارک و تعالی میفرمایند دین مجموعه راهنما و قوانین زندگی سعادت آفرین برای بشر هست، ما چطوری دین را بشناسیم؟ مرحوم استاد شیخ مرتضی مطهری، علامه مطهری، صلوات ختم کن. یکی از محققین و دانشمندان معاصر جهان اسلام هست که واقعا حرف و سخنش وزین هست. در کتاب تحت عنوان ایمان مذهبی می نویسد که بعضی ها اشکال میکنه و سوال مطرح میکنه، خب ما که عقل داریم، ما که چشم داریم، ما که گوش داریم، ما که میتوانیم، خب چه نیاز هست به دین؟ اما در کنار سوالهای دیگه مطرح میشه، آیا بشر با همه توانمندی های فکری و عقلانیش، اگر شما از عقلا بپرسید که راه سعادت بشر چیست، چند نوع جواب برای ما ارائه میدهد؟ این همان نکته است که شب گذشته عرض کردیم که انشالله کمی باز خواهیم کرد، البته با توجه به فرصتی که داریم. فرصت متاسفانه یک مقداری کم است. و اما این عقلا چی جواب میده برای ما و شما؟ اکثریت خب هر کدام از یک منظری تحلیل میکنه، یا مثلا با و شما از یک فیلسوف یا از یک دانشمند دیگری غیر از فقها سوال کنیم در رابطه با حرام و حلال، هر کدام نظری را دارن، هر کدام تحلیلی را دارن، هر کدام در حقیقت منطقی را ارائه میکنن. اما دین الهی برای ما مشخصاً به عنوان یک فصل الخطاب میگوید این حرام است به این دلیل، به این دلیل، به این دلیل، این حلال است به این دلیل، به این دلیل، به این دلیل، این راهچاره نجات بشریت است به این دلیل، این راه سعادت در دنیا و آخرت است به این دلیل. و برای همین است که دین فصل الخطاب است. خب در رابطه با دین و تدین و دینداری ماها چند دسته میشیم. یک عده دینداریشون فصلی است. با عرض معذرت عرض میکنم، حالا چون این مجالسی است که از ابتدا عرض کردیم که باید ما بسیار راحت صحبت کنیم با هم و پیشنهاد بعضی از جوانان ما تا میشه ما ساده‌تر و راحت‌تر با هم سخن بگوییم. یک عده فصلی دین دارن. فصلی دین دارن. وقتی که محرم میشه، وقتی که رمضان میشه، خب طبیعتاً اینها علاقمندیشان بیشتر میشه. و امیدوار هستیم که انشاءالله تعالی به برکت ایام محرم حسینی این شور و شعور و علاقه ما به مجالس معرفتی بیشتر شود. صلوات ختم کن. این نوع دینداری ناقص است. با لحظات سیر در فضای مجازی ممکن است هر لحظه بگه خب عجیب است، این اشکال شده، این اشکال شده، این دین چی به درد ما میخوره، قسمتش این مشکل داره، این قسمتش این مشکل داره. بالاخره بسیار سردوچار سردرگمی ها میشه. یکی از نمونه ها هارون است، هارون عباسی. البته لقب رشید شایسته چنین شخصی نیست، حالا معروف است به هارون الرشید. میگه هارون الرشید وقتی که فضیل درس اخلاق میداد خیلی میگریست. وقتی که میآمد به مکه به زیارت خانه خدا خیلی گریه میکرد. اما از یک طرف وقتی که مطرب می آورد نفر اول بود که به اصطلاح شرکت میکرد. دینداری فصلی این است. به فرموده امام علی علیه السلام همه رعاء اتباع یمیلون بكل ریح لم یستدیعوا بنور العلم ولم یلجأوا برکن الوثیق. اینها مانند کف سر آب هستند و مانند مگسانی هستند که هم دور شیرینی میشینن هم دور نجاست. هیچ وقت نمیخواهند با آنچه که حقیقت است، با آنچه که واقعیت است، با آنچه که برخواسته از عقلانیت و علمیت است، یعنی همان وحی الهی که منطبق بر عقلانیت است، اینها تن بده. لم یلجأوا برکن الوثیق، حتی حاضر نیستن که در حقیقت یک تکیه‌گاه محکم در زندگی داشته باشن. لذا این دینداری ناقص است. ما برای این در مجالس ابا عبدالله الحسین دری 13 شب شرکت میکنیم و همچنین در ادامه که الحمدلله تعالی مراکز برنامه دارن. که در حقیقت دریابیم که امام حسین علیه السلام با این همه جانفشانیش، با این همه فداکاریش، آیا برای من و تو به عنوان انسان قرن 21 چه حرفی دارد؟ در کجای زندگی ما و شما امام حسین علیه السلام قرار دارد؟ آیا فقط در مخیلات ما و در توهمات ماست، در احساسات ماست، در ادراک حسی ماست که برای امام حسین عزاداری کنیم؟ لازم هست اما کافی نیست عزیزان. اما دسته دوم دینداران کسانی هستند که اگر دین برایشان نفع داشت اینها انتفاعی هستند. اگر دین برایشان نفعی داشت، سود مادی داشت، مطرح شدن در جامعه، اینا دیندارن. چی کار میکنن؟ خود ظاهرشان متاسفانه میبینن بعضیا. یعنی اینها سوء استفاده از دین و دین مداری میکنن. نمونه های فراوانی رو ما داشت. خب مثالی که برادر عزیز ما فاضل دانشمند جناب دکتر صاحب شکیل فرمودن، عمر سعد کسی است که از خردسالی با امام حسین کلان شده. خوب میشناسد که حسین ابن علی علیه السلام کیست و چگونه شخصیتی است، اما دلش آرام نمیگیره. اینا بدبخت‌ترین آدم‌های دنیا هستند. به اصطلاح عامیانه هم خرما رو میخواهن، همون مرکب میخواهن که آخرا به هیچ کدامش نمیرسن. دلشان طاقت نمیکنه. اینها کسانی هستند که در دلشان منافقت دارن، مشکل دارن، یعنی با خودشان نمیتونن کنار بیاین. هیچ وقت ایمان اینها رشد نخواهد کرد، بلکه اینها سقوط میکنن. این دسته از دینداران هر جایی که نفعشان باشه به همون طرف هستن. اما یک عده از دینداران سطحی فکر میکنن، یعنی میگن خب حالا ما این دعا را یاد گرفتیم، این نماز خدا خواندیم، این روزه خدا گرفتیم، همین امور دینی امور شخصی ماست، به خود ما مربوطه، کار نداریم بقیه چی کار میکنه، کار نداریم که برادر ما چی میکنه، کار نداریم که خواهر ما چی میکنه، کار نداریم که قوم و فامیل ما و مردم ما و جامعه ما چی میکنه. یعنی از جمله دینداران بمچی سطحی هستند، چیزی که متاسفانه ما در افغانستان دیدیم از هر سه نوعی که یاد کردیم متاسفانه، و سبب چقدر مشکلات و بدبختی و رنجهای ما شد. و امروز هم در جهان اسلام اینا را ما و شما میبینیم. یک عده متاسفانه با خشک مقدسیشان فکر میکنه که دین یک امر فردی است، هیچ کاری به خانواده و اجتماع نداره، برای خود باشیم تمام. خب مضراتش ما میبینیم که هیچ نوع رشدی در آن نیست. اما بهترین و عالیترین نوع دینداری و تدین عزیزان در پرتو مکتب فکری امام حسین علیه السلام تدین همه جانبه و عالمانه است. امام حسین علیه السلام وقتی که از مدینه منوره به سمت مکه حرکت کرد و 4 ماه و اندی در مکه بود، چی میکرد امام حسین علیه السلام؟ آیا امام حسین علیه بالله از ترس اونجا پناه برده بود؟ متاسفانه این دلیل درستی نیست که بعضیا بیان میکنه. نه، امام حسین علیه السلام از همان ابتدای حرکتش که فرمود و علی الاسلام السلام قد بلیت بمثل یدید براه هذه الامه، دیگه فاتحه اسلام رو باید خواند. دیگه این دینداری به درد نمیخورد وقتی که مردم ببیند که یزید میخواهد به زور از مردم بیعت بگیرد و به گرده مردم سوار شود. من حسین طاقتی رو ندارم، با اهل و حیان خود حرکت میکنم، با همه عزیزان خود حرکت میکنم و در این راه حاضر هستم از همه چیز خود بگذرم. یعنی چه؟ یعنی که امام حسین علیه السلام میخواهد به ما بفهماند حرکتش یک حرکت اصلاحی است در جهت امر به معروف و نهی از منکر و اصلاح جامعه و روشنگری در مسیر سنت جدش و سیره پدرش امام علی علیه السلام. صلوات ختم کن. و یکی از مصادیق دینداران شجاعت است عزیزان. شجاعت یک واژه گرانقدر و دوست داشتنی است که نوع بشر هر کسی دوست دارد شجاع باشد. چون امشب اختصاص دارد به حضرت ابوالفضل العباس، گرچه فرمودن بعد از نماز انشاءالله مصائب میخوانیم، اما من میخوایم به چند نکته اشاره کنیم که آماده شویم که امشب ما برای گرامی داشته علمدار کربلا و باب الحوائج واقعا چقدر مشتاقیم و چقدر لحظه شماری میکنیم که علم حضرت عباس برافراشته بماند. و جوانان ما طوری خبر شدیم آمادگی های خاص خود گرفتن و امشب یعنی همون هر شبی که شب هفت روز هفت که وقتی که این علم بر رسم رسوم ما و شما در هفتم بلند میشه، یک ذوق و شوق و یک شور و شعور خاصی دارد. اینها به سبب چیست؟ ابوالفضل العباس فضائل زیادی دارد، عالم است، دانشمند است، مؤدب است، اما آنچه که جوانان را و نسل جوان را به وجد می آورد شجاعت ابوالفضل العباس است. عزیزان، شجاعت یک امر تعادلی برای غضب انسان هست. اگر انسان غضبش را خوب در حقیقت کنترل کرد و نگذاشت غلیان کند و به تحور به اصطلاح ادامه پیدا کند و همچنین نگذاشت که پایین برود و به اصطلاح ترس او را فرا بگیرد، یعنی در یک حالت تعادل، این میشه شجاعت. شجاعت الرجل علی قدر همت. امام علی علیه السلام میفرماید شجاعت یک انسان بسته به همت اوست. پیامبر گرامی اسلام محمد ابن عبدالله صلی الله علیه و آله و سلم فرمود اشجع الناس من غلب هوا. شجاعترین مردم کسی است که بر هوای نفسش غلبه کند. لذا قرآن کریم واژه و مفهوم شجاعت را وابسته به ایمان می‌داند. عزیزان، و ایمان پایه اساسی دینداری ماست. ما برای این هستیم که در این مجالس شرکت میکنیم که ایمانمان یک ایمان سالم باشد و چگونه بر این ایمان خود بیافزاییم. این کیلویی و پوندی نیست که ما به این بیافزاییم. فزونی ایمان بسته به عقلانیت و علمیت ما دارد. اگر ما به عنوان مسلمان اهل علم باشیم، اهل عقلانیت باشیم، مطمئن باشیم این ایمان ما یک ایمان عالی است، یک ایمان سالم است، یک ایمان لرزان و سطحی نیست. لذا خیلی کسا در واقعه عاشورا رویش کردن، بالا رفتن، اما متاسفانه خیلی کسا هم ریزش کردن، افتادن، سقوط کردن، بعضی هم راکت ماندن که از آنها هیچ ذکر خیری دیگر نشد. اما چه چیز سبب میشه که انسان شجاع شود؟ عزیزان، اول ایمان به خدا. دومین عامل شجاعت تکیه زدن به تکیهگاه محکم است. پیامبر صلوات الله علیه و آله و سلم در جمع نشسته بود، سوال کرد مل عروة الوثقا، عروة الوثقا چیست؟ هر کس جوابی داد که به اصطلاح این عروه وثقا و این ریسمان محکم چیست؟ یکی گفت نماز است، گفت نماز خوب است اما نماز نیست. یکی گفت روزه است، هر کدام چیزی گفت. پیامبر صلوات الله علیه و آله و سلم اللهم صل علی فرمود عروة الوثقا حب لله و بغض لله، یا حب فی الله و بغض فی الله. حب و بغض یعنی دوستی و دشمنی انسان به خاطر پروردگار عالم باشد و حد وسط این را که عالی ترین مرتبه است، یعنی دوستی انسان برای خدا و دشمنی انسان برای خدا، و انسانی که بتواند غضبش را برای خدا کنترل کند او انسان شجاع است. لذا این را ما در شخصیت ابوالفضل العباس علیه السلام میبینیم، چون لحظات ملکوتی اذان مغرب است. انشاءالله به استقبال نماز مغرب خواهیم رفت و بعد از نماز انشاءالله طوری که امر فرمودن انشاءالله روضه رضوان ابوالفضل العباس علیه السلام را و مراسم برافراشتن علم حضرت عباس را بعد از نماز خواهیم داشت. السلام علیک یا ابا عبدالله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم منا جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد منا لزيارتكم. همه با هم السلام على